Litigation is an adversarial process. In this next segment, we explore issues of sharp practice, of aggression, and of developing a culture of civility in legal professionalism.
For me in litigation, one of the things that I felt most acutely when I began, that there were forces around me pushing me to be hyper-aggressive in the conduct of what I did, both in the courtroom and outside the courtroom. Clients seemed to demand it because they wanted a surrogate warrior, and opponents seemed to challenge you to perform that way because competition being what it is and lawyers being competitive as they are, it produced a kind of super aggression that I thought was something I had to grapple with. And I remember several times describing the sense of concern I felt that this was, I had an intuitive sense that this wasn't the most effective way to track one's early professional path.
Young lawyers often confuse strong advocacy with that kind of aggressive position. Well, I'd say that as a young lawyer, I probably did sometimes what everyone is tempted to do, which is to respond somewhat in kind, because you think that's a way to aggressively and strongly assert your client's position. And there are certainly incidents that I think back on that if I went to do it all over again, I would respond differently now. Not that I think I ever crossed a line, but I think that there are moments where I thought probably I shouldn't have reacted quite so badly.
When I graduated from law school, I looked for an articling job, and back in those days, it was not hard to get, so I did one interview with somebody I'd got to know in the Hard House Debating Society, Ian Scott, who was a 10-year lawyer at that point and a rising star. And I articled with him and then went back as a lawyer with him. And I remember him coming in one day after we'd had a discussion like this and just showing me an example. As so often happens, particularly with younger lawyers, correspondence had been flowing back and forth between Ian and somebody on the other side of one of his cases who was a good deal more junior to him that had ratcheted the rhetoric up to the ceiling. I mean, it was absolutely extreme, over the top, personalized, and so on. And Ian showed me the letter that had exemplified most of this coming from the other letter, and then said, I'm going to draft a reply and I'll show it to you. And he came in about 5 minutes later with a one-sentence reply. It said, Dear Mr. So-and-so, have you nothing better to do? Yours very truly. You know, exemplifying that really this was both a waste and, in a sense, counterproductive.
You know, over the years, I developed a different style, which was, as you said, sort of just sticking to your point, but doing so politely, carefully, you know, putting things in writing in a way that you're not afraid if anybody reads it. It's just clearly stating the position and not inflaming things, because that's just kind of the worst kind of advocacy in the end. And at times you would see the really aggressive advocacy win the day, and that can be frustrating. But I think you have to really remain true to what you think are your principles, and in the end, you know, certainly as I develop more experience, I would certainly see that happening less and less often.
The reality of the way one assists the client most and the way one assists the court most is to rein in that sense of aggressiveness and to base one's position on reason, argument, preparation, and persuasion.